Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling strangely defeated? Even though you said everything you needed to say. You explained yourself clearly. You defended your position calmly. You chose your words carefully. And yet, something felt off. There was a tightness in your chest, a knot in your throat, a quiet sense that the more you spoke, the smaller you became. Maybe you've noticed this pattern. The loudest people dominate the room. They interrupt. They mock. They speak with confidence that borders on arrogance. And somewhere along the way, you were taught that silence meant weakness, that not defending yourself meant surrender, that not reacting meant losing. But what if that belief is completely wrong? What if true power has never lived in words, but in their absence? Today, I want to show you something most people never realize. Silence is not passive. Silence is not submission. Silence is not losing. Silence, when mastered, is devastatingly powerful. And once you understand why, you will never experience conversations, conflict, or control the same way again. If you're someone who feels overlooked, overshadowed, emotionally drained by explaining yourself, this video is for you. Stay with me. If content like this speaks to you, take a moment to subscribe to the Mind Kit. This channel exists for those ready to reclaim their inner authority. Chapter 1. Why we feel compelled to respond. Why do we feel such an intense urge to respond? To correct, to clarify, to justify ourselves. Why does silence feel uncomfortable, almost dangerous? From a psychological perspective, the answer is simple but uncomfortable. We have been conditioned to believe that our worth depends on being understood. From childhood, many of us learned that love, safety, and belonging came from explanation. Explain yourself properly. Don't be misunderstood. Make sure they know your intention. But beneath this habit lives something deeper. Fear. The fear of appearing weak. The fear of being dismissed. The fear of losing control of the narrative. This fear is rooted in the ego, not arrogance, but fragility. A fragile ego cannot tolerate ambiguity. It confuses disagreement with rejection. It interprets silence as a threat. That's why arguments rarely seek truth. They seek power. People don't argue to understand. They argue to defend an identity that feels unstable. And when you feel compelled to explain yourself endlessly, you are unconsciously revealing something, that you still need permission to exist as you are. This is what Nietzsche referred to as herd morality, a way of living that prioritizes approval over authenticity, and it quietly drains your power. Chapter 2. The illusion of winning arguments. We're taught that conversations are battles. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who explains better? But Nietzsche saw something unsettling. The moment you feel the need to convince, you've already lost. Why? Because the need to convince reveals dependence. It reveals that your sense of truth still relies on external validation. From a Jungian perspective, this is the ego seeking reassurance, desperate to stabilize itself through others. But truth doesn't require applause, and power doesn't announce itself. The strongest individuals throughout history were not the loudest. They were the most grounded. They didn't react to every provocation. They didn't explain themselves to those committed to misunderstanding them. They understood something subtle. Every word you offer is energy given away. Every reaction is information revealed. And the more you react, the more accessible you become. If this is resonating so far, let me know in the comments. Chapter 3. Silence is presence, not absence. Most people misunderstand silence. They see it as emptiness. But psychologically, silence is presence amplified. Silence destabilizes because it removes predictability. When someone expects a reaction and receives none, their nervous system activates. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, lights up. Questions flood their mind. Are they judging me? Did I say too much? Why aren't they responding? Silence becomes a mirror. and most people are deeply uncomfortable with their reflection. Carl Jung taught that what disturbs us in others often reveals our own shadow, the parts of ourselves we haven't integrated. Silence forces confrontation with that shadow. It removes distraction. It removes control. It exposes insecurity. That's why silence feels threatening. Not because it's aggressive, but because it's honest. Chapter 4: The Übermensch and Inner Authority. Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, not as a tyrant, but as a psychologically integrated individual, someone who has transcended reactive living. The Übermensch does not seek to dominate others. He seeks to master himself, and silence is one of his greatest tools. He doesn't engage in emotional games. He doesn't fight for attention. He doesn't explain his existence. His silence is intentional, charged, alive. While others speak to fill space, he observes. While others reveal insecurity through over-explanation, he conserves energy. And in a world addicted to noise, this calm becomes magnetic. Because authority doesn't shout, it radiates. If you feel called to develop this kind of inner mastery, leave a like. Chapter 5: Why Silence Unmasks Manipulators. Manipulators rely on reactions. They provoke to control. They pressure to dominate. They extract emotional energy to feel powerful. When you react, you feed the cycle. But when you choose silence, something remarkable happens. They unravel. Without your response, they lose orientation. They over-explain. They contradict themselves. They reveal insecurity. This isn't accidental. Psychologically, silence removes the external regulation they depend on. And when someone cannot regulate themselves internally, they panic. Silence becomes a boundary, not aggressive, not defensive, just immovable. And boundaries terrify those who thrive on intrusion. Chapter 6: Strategic Silence versus Self-Erasure. Now here's the crucial distinction. Not all silence is power. Some silence is trauma. Many people were conditioned to stay quiet to survive, to avoid conflict, to remain agreeable. This is not mastery. This is self-erasure. Nietzsche warned against this. He called it the morality of submission, where individuals confuse compliance with virtue. If your silence is rooted in fear, it drains you. If your silence is rooted in guilt, it shrinks you. But when silence is rooted in self-worth, it expands you. The difference lies in intention. Silence chosen consciously is power. Silence chosen unconsciously is surrender. Healing begins when you reclaim choice. Chapter 7: How to Use Silence Intentionally. Let's ground this. Here's how silence becomes strength. 1. Pause when triggered. Resist the urge to respond immediately. The pause alone changes the power dynamic. 2. Observe instead of preparing a reply. Listen without planning your defense. Notice tone, emotion, contradiction. 3. Let discomfort do the work. Allow silence to stretch. Tension reveals truth. 4. Speak only when necessary. And when you do, speak simply. Precision over volume. This isn't about control over others. It's about sovereignty over yourself. If this perspective is shifting something inside you, comment below. I choose silence with strength. Let it be a declaration to yourself. Finally, becoming the one who no longer needs to prove. Silence is not emptiness. It is integration. It is the moment you stop reacting and start being. The Übermensch does not disappear into silence. He stands firmly within it. He doesn't seek validation. He doesn't chase understanding. He doesn't beg to be heard. Because his presence is enough. Ask yourself, how often have you gone quiet out of fear? How often have you explained yourself to be accepted? How often have you abandoned your truth for peace? That version of silence ends today. From now on, your silence carries weight. It sets boundaries. It commands respect. not because it intimidates, but because it's anchored. And remember, the weak shout, the reactive explain, the wise choose when to speak, and the truly powerful, they are heard, even when they say nothing.